Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Did you know that Black women in the United States are 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy related causes than white women? That's a heartbreaking reality, and it's even more alarming when we consider the role of environmental injustice play in these outcomes. Decades of systematic racism have forced many Black families to live in neighborhoods with more pollution, poor quality housing, and limited access to clean water and healthy food. Black women are therefore exposed to a higher level of environmental hazards, all of which increase their risk of pregnancy complications like preterm birth, low birth weight, and even maternal death. We understand how heavy and personal this topic can feel, especially for those who have lived these experiences or know someone who has. And that's why we're so glad to chat on IG Live today with Dr. K, pregnancy specialist. Dr. K, pregnancy specialist, is a board certified practitioner and OBGYN, as well as a maternal fetal medicine. During this live, we're going to discuss the long-standing inequity in Black maternal care, the role of environment plays in pregnancy outcomes for people of color, what to ask if you are recommended a C-section and you think it's unnecessary, and so much more. So I'm gonna. Hi, Dr. K.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you? Thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate the invitation.
And oh, I love your dress. Is this a dress? This is so
Just a
nice.
top,
No,
just a, just a colorful top with fun shoulders.
it's really nice, and you have a matching headset.
Yeah, it's just like Mickey Mouse. A very, very affordable pair of headset for when I travel and I forget to bring wireless earphones and then
Yeah,
just, get ones
perfect.
that plug in and have a microphone. Hopefully the audio's okay.
No, it's perfect. It's perfect.
Okay, good, good.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you became a board certified OBGYN.
Yeah, so I am board certified in obstetrics and gynecology as well as maternal fetal medicine. I wanted to be an obstetrician since I was a young girl. And then when I finally got into training, I was really inspired by the chairperson at the program where I trained. And um, the more and more that they talked and I learned from them, I really thought that maternal fetal medicine was going to really positioned me to be a very good obstetrician and to be a part of improving outcomes for mothers and their offspring and for advancing the knowledge that we have about what is safe and what is not safe and setting kind of standards and recommendations for the future of maternity care. So I went into maternal fetal medicine, trained in that, and then I became board certified. I've been certified in both for several years now.
Oh, wow. I love your bio, which kind of echoes a little bit what you just described. And it states Dr. K believes in every pregnant person has the right to have comprehensive information on their pregnancy and their health so that they can make an informed decision about what's best for them. Why is this so important to you?
Well, I think I have multiple different backgrounds that lead me to be the kind of person that strongly believes in the ability to make decisions for oneself. I am a descendant of Black people. My particular area comes from the Caribbean, but in general, most of the descendants of slaves that were a part of some kind of colony in the Americas have a legacy of not having full autonomy over their body, being forced into different things, having oppression that involved reproduction as well. And as a descendant of that experience, I strongly believe in the right of us as free people to make decisions for ourselves. I'm also a person who follows Jesus in my faith, and not all people have the same ideas when it comes to faith. And I think when we think about the ability to choose or not to choose faith for ourselves, we want to make our own decisions. Um, so, there are some other things, but I think those are two kind of major areas that intersect where I look at the decisions that I might make for myself, and I could maybe compare them to a peer in my field, and we might make very different decisions because of our experiences, because of the lens with which we interact with the world. And so, if for myself as a professional, if I could say, well, I wouldn't make the same decision, even as an informed person, about what I would do in my pregnancy compared to a peer, because these different experiences that we bring to those decisions, then even more so for the people that we are meant to be serving, they have different perspectives, they have different experiences, they have a different framework in which their values would lead them to make certain decisions. And so even there's a difference sometimes where a trained professional may have a different value system than a non-healthcare professional who's pregnant. And it is not fair for us to make decisions from our lens for people that have a different lens and a different value system. So I think for all of those kind of overlapping and intersecting reasons, I strongly believe that in the healthcare field, we know in part. We don't know everything in its totality. And we have our own biases, and it's not our job to make decisions for other individuals who have a capacity to make a decision for themselves and who have been recognized as an individual be able to make a decision for themselves in terms of the health system. So, when it comes to minors, it's a little bit of a different context depending on where they live and whether or not the government considers them emancipated because of their pregnancy. But for the most part, when we're talking about adults, we consider most adults as autonomous people that should be able to make healthcare decisions for themselves. And I don't believe that pregnancy is a reason that we should interfere with that autonomy.
I also feel like in general, there's just like if you're sick, there's a lot of healthcare decision to be made already. But pregnancy, that's like one is like a really special time, and then second, it's even I feel like pregnancy involves so many more decisions that you have to make throughout pregnancy, even before you get pregnant. So like for people to equip with that knowledge, be able to make these like decision would be so important.
Yeah. And also, we're not always transparent in the healthcare field that we have a bias that influences what we would choose for our patients, which could be different than what we would choose for ourselves. And so there are sometimes competing interests that go into recommendations, and we're not always transparent about that. Sometimes it is, well, I don't do this skill set, but I don't want to acknowledge that, and I don't want to lose this patient to someone else who does have that skill set. So maybe I make a recommendation within my skill set. Well, that's not really um, that's almost like something where you have to disclose your conflicts of interest. That's essentially a conflict of interest that could go into a recommendation. And in some fields, when it comes to health science, when it comes to regular science, or some other areas, sometimes finance, business, we have to disclose conflicts of interest. We have to disclose the things that can influence our business or what we report about or products that we bring to market. But in health, there are sometimes conflicts of interest that go into a recommendation that don't get disclosed. And I don't think that's fair. You can also have, I think, the health system as one that rewards productivity and mass numbers and volumes is in some ways a conflict of interest to health outcomes that we want to improve. So there are several layers of overlap that I think I see a little bit as a person who comes from kind of a marginalized group, and sometimes you need the eyes of somebody that comes from a different group to see things that maybe others don't see so easily.
So true. You have so much great content on your feeds about Black women and diverse pregnancy outcomes. I kind of mentioned some of the staggering statistics. Why do you think that these kind of conversations are so important?
I think there is a lot of opportunity to heighten awareness um, within the Black community. Um, there is some. some outcomes are for a lack of of awareness and knowledge about what certain things look like. You know, when something is within the scope of what's acceptable, and the variations of pregnancy, and when things are dangerous, when they're not normal. Um, I think there is also, for many people, a difference in the health care and supervision and interaction that they are receiving, as women, Black birthing people, compared to other races. And when we look at different surveys, we look at data that it, you know, evaluates for race and whether or not there are differences, we see that affirmed, that there are differences, that things do not appear to be equal in general, that there are deviations that maybe happen more, that Black women, Black birthing people experience. So that's part of it, where uh, it's not an even health experience in terms of interacting with the medical community. There are perceptions that are wrong. There are biases that people are unaware of that are affecting how they interact with individuals that are seeking care, that also affect the care that those people receive. And then, you know, to the topic of this conversation, there are also differences in the conditions that affect health in our environment, in neighborhoods. When we look at uh, exposures to environmental pollutions in the air, in the water, in the ground, and we look at where those seem to cluster more, we see an intersection with certain communities where their communities lie in areas that might have more air pollution, more groundwater pollution, more plastic pollution, more toxic runoff from a major plant or facility, highways built through communities, you know, that contribute to air. And so maybe they also have less regulation, and those scenarios not only affect the pregnancy, but they affect the overall health of the people before they get pregnant. So then when people do get pregnant, they may come into the pregnancy at a health disadvantage. And then we can see the extreme situation of pregnancy bring out pregnancy complications. And so sometimes we think, oh, we might look at certain numbers in isolation. So if you look at a number in isolation, you say, okay, there the obesity rate within the Black maternity community is greater than the obesity rate in the white maternity community, or in the Asian maternity community, or in Hispanic maternity community. Sure, let's look at that in isolation. We know that obesity can be related to almost every major outcome of disinterest, every adverse outcome that, you know, a pregnancy has some association more or less to obesity. But now let's put it in a little bit more context. Okay, well, um, inflammation contributes to obesity. So areas that are hot spots for encouraging body-wide inflammation, whether that's going to be from forever chemicals in your water, or on your clothing, or in your perfumes, or in your beauty products, you know, in your hair uh, accessories. um, so we know that the Black community is targeted for the most concerning cosmetic and beauty product, hair hygiene products than any other racial demographic. Um, we know that communities that have that they are Black people are generally clustered into communities that have a more distribution of environmental toxin. They are often clustered into communities that are considered food deserts, where there are not grocery stores that have fresh produce. There was a particular person, a pastor, that was making a lawsuit against Dollar General recently, and they were saying how that particular chain of stores has lobbied to continue to prevent access to predominantly Black neighborhoods from grocery stores. So there are neighborhoods where that's not unusual in certain areas where Black people are clustered, where they don't have a true grocery store. They might have a convenience store that might sell food, maybe packaged food, but they don't have the same access to fresh fruits and vegetables and not highly processed foods that are high in sodium, high in sugar, poor in quality, poor in nutrition. So we have a clustering of people in areas with low access to high quality food at a reasonable rate. If they are going to have produce, it might be significantly more expensive than some other neighborhoods. So that might further limit the accessibility of those foods for the average person, because the average working American in the United States is not well off. The
Right.
average working American in the United States is struggling. Um, and so we see this confluence, and that's going to affect obesity rates, right? Inflammation, lack of access to quality food, inaffordability of quality food, and hormonal disruption from multiple sources. All of that is inflammatory. That all contributes to obesity. Well, now the obesity rate may be an outcome, not not something necessarily that is genetic or just inherent to these people. This could be an outcome of injustice that then affects outcomes in the extreme pressure cooker we call pregnancy. And so
Mhm.
I think it's important for us to really kind of evaluate context more thoughtfully, um, and really start to think, okay, how much of this is individual responsibility and how much of this is our systemic products of systemic problem? Is our society set up for these outcomes? And do Black pregnant moms and birthing people live at the intersections of these problems and then demonstrate where the areas of vulnerability are, demonstrate what happens at these intersections? Are they essentially um, the flag post for the inequities in our system and the ways that these different factors produce adverse outcomes in pregnancy at higher rates compared to when these factors are not all interplaying and people have better health outcomes?
That is so true. And so, since we're talking about these environmental exposures, some of them are like out of our control. So, what are some things in your control that you would recommend for minimizing toxic chemical burdens?
Yeah, so, a lot of it is outside of the individual control. I think I think the major takeaways that um, these are major system problems. Uh, Largely, the government has a responsibility to address these things to improve maternal outcome. They have a responsibility to make investments into the infrastructure and into the environment and into neighborhoods and communities to improve outcomes. And that if they did that, it actually probably would save money because we pay most for adverse health outcomes. We pay the most for people that have poor health and that are receiving care from the medical system. They cost us the most. And so prevention could save and could elevate many communities and many we could contribute better to the future and to the people of the future that could be more productive if we invest in prevention and in improving the health of these communities. But what can we do on a personal level? I think it is important for us to start becoming increasingly aware of the different ways by which we interact with things that negatively affect our health. And then where we have the ability to limit those interactions, to start to do that. And where we have the ability to refocus our spending to improve our health, then I think it's important for us to do that. So some of the things that I try to do with my account is to help bring awareness to some of these things, some of these inflammation um, kind of toxicities and hormone interfering um, substances. And so, and there's more of that I need to do and that I want to do in partnering with groups like yours and others that are trying to raise awareness so that these concepts, these terms are not unfamiliar to people, that they can start to be mindful about how they can do whatever they can to scale down their exposure. So, when we're talking about air quality, that's a hard one to significantly reduce. You can do some things in your home. You can try to have an air filter. You can try to remove certain materials. You maybe to vacuum and to get rid of carpet. Try to limit your mold. But the outside, the air outside is hard for you to affect. That if you have the means, it may mean moving from an area that has a significant particulate matter pollution level. And there are major hotspots. I was looking at some maps before I got into this meeting in the recent past of overlap. We see that there's certain areas of the country that have a lot of overlap with things that lead to adverse outcomes, whether they have um, the areas of kind of like coal or plastic or forever chemicals or air quality. And so we start looking at these maps of different outcomes and we see, regions that come up over and over again. A few states in the South have consistently have the worst maternity outcomes, the worst stillbirth and preterm birth kind of, neonate like offspring outcomes. And then we see that they also have very concerning, near toxic waste release, and then also areas of concerning air pollution, and then also areas where there aren't as many maternity care providers. There's a lot of overlap in some of these areas. Um, but going back to if you have the means to move, if you're in an area with high pollution, that's one potential thing you could do. When it comes to um, our water, maybe installing in your home, if you have the means to do that, a water filtering system that is going to filter out a significant amount of concerning chemicals. We know that there's a large percentage of American water that is contaminated by concerning chemicals that create inflammation. And, you might not drink tap water, but you might rinse your vegetables and your fruit. You might brush your teeth, and rinse out that in your mouth. You're showering or bathing in that water. And so, washing our face and our hair. And so, okay, we might not drink that water, but we're still being exposed to this water. Um, so whether it's a tap water filter or a system filter for your home, those can be pricey. I think there are some uh, options to potentially afford it with health money. So for me, I try to use my health savings, health kind of reimbursement funds to try and pay for some of these things. Not everybody has something like that. If you're on government sponsored insurance like Medicaid, they may not reimburse something like that. Um, but if you have private insurance attached to like a health paying fund, you could probably use something like that money, and they may not ask you for receipts, or you could put in a receipt, show what it is, and maybe they'll reimburse. Um, that's something that I do. I even have like a straw from a particular company that filters out plastics. I try to avoid plastic and try and go down to stainless steel, reusable things. Um, uh, Limiting your plastics in your life. I've been telling my husband, I really want to get rid of a lot of plastic. So some of the kids containers, trying to switch to stainless steel, not using plastic uh, saving containers like reusable Tupperware and um, try not to heat things in the microwave that are in plastic, not put it in a dishwasher. And then all the synthetic fabrics, which are essentially plastics, trying to get back, trying to get back to, okay, for what I want to wear on my body, being mindful of natural breathable fibers being better for my body than the synthetic, all of these really stretchy, elastic like fabrics that are linked to changes in hormone, changes in inflammation, that release small amounts of plastic, microplastics into our water when we wash them. And um, then it's uh, different things like cosmetics, trying to be mindful of go to daddy-o. I'm doing something. Thank you. Very pretty. Go hang out with your dad and close the door. Thank you so much. Love you.
Well, we almost finished. Sorry.
Um, but so then I'm mindful of different uh, ingredients and things like in my cosmetics. Now, for me, one thing that has helped me, interestingly, is I'm allergic to a lot of concerning ingredients. So, so I've done like an allergen skin test, and I have a long, almost 200 item list of things that would give me a rash. And interestingly, these are often highly allergic things, very skin irritating, inflammation causing, endocrine disrupting. So a lot of things on my non-safe list are things that would be on many people's list of things they should avoid. Um, but it's like being mindful of fragrances. I try to be intentional about fragrance. This is something a lot of people love fragrance things, but fragrances often have hormone altering chemicals in them. And so it's, detergents, dishwashing soap potentially without fragrance, not using a lot of plugins in your home that release fragrances, being mindful about when I would put on perfume, try to limit how often I might do that. Fragrance free shampoo and conditioner and things, and just the body lotions without all of that. Um, so it's just trying to be mindful of the many different ways that we interact with things that create inflammation in our bodies, and that can affect our hormones, that can lead to chronic disorders like asthma, and obesity, and hypertension, and diabetes, and infertility or difficulty with fertility, and can affect our pregnancy. And then doing what I can with what's in my realm of myself as a consumer to say, okay, if I am going to consume, I can try my best to at least be intentional about that consumption and to limit what I consume. Question my Congress people to make investments into the Environmental Protection Agency and into clean water and clean air. And I can say, I'm going to contact my Congress people to vote no on things that make the environment worse. Vote no on not having oversight in regards to this. Vote no on more harm on the oversight of artificial but I can use my voice to contact my Congress people and to say these are the things that are important to me. But the things I have the most control over is what I bring into my home, the environment within my home, how I spend my money, what I put on my body, what I eat and I drink. That's what I have potentially the most control over. And so being aware of the different ways um, that certain substances and chemicals and things can affect me, and then trying to be mindful to limit those interactions, I think is an actionable step for people. And there are going to be different scales of the ability to affect those things that are unfortunately unfortunate that um, because it's a problem that is really at the systemic government level of control, it's unfortunate that the ability for us to individually make changes is going to be affected by our financial ability to do some of those things.
I still have like a ton of questions for you. I think would you be open to get on another live with us to schedule another one?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I mean, was there are we at did we like go over time? Sometimes I talk too much, sorry.
No, because it's like a really interesting topic. This is the first time we kind of cover environmental injustice and talking about this topic and also be very actionable for people to hear. So I think it's really important to, I feel like we should do another one just to cut it a little bit
Sure,
short
sure,
for
sure,
people
sure.
to, so we have more time to like dive into it. But before we finish, I want to ask, because I think it's really hard to find the OBGYN with your first with your lens, and then second, be very comprehensive about not just OB/GYN care, but also like the whole environment piece. That's super important. So how can someone work with you?
Yeah, so um I am in the process of kind of moving my work. I do offer one, I try to put a lot of information out there on social media because I think there's a certain level of information that should be freely accessible. And I don't want people to only feel like they can get access to important information that could help them make decisions, could help raise their awareness by having to pay. To me, there's a certain level of information that and awareness that we as health professionals should be contributing to that's freely accessible to people. So I try to um, raise awareness about these topics, and there's more that I need to do and I want to do on this. So to people that are tuning in, you can follow me on Dr. K Pregnancy Specialist. I'm most involved on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok. I answer questions when people send me questions in my direct messages. I answer them, and I appreciate the opportunity to connect with people and to try and help direct them in the right way to kind of get the care that they need from the people that are on the ground with them, and to advocate for thorough evaluation on their options. So if people have questions, they can always send them to me. I try not to share my DM stories, and to expose people, but to respect that they trusted me with their questions. And then I'm also I offer doula services, which as a higher risk physician to talk through the questions, the uncertainties, the things that um, the typical pregnancy doula relationship may not cover. So most doulas are very effective, very helpful for normal pregnancy and kind of preparing her I see. And then, when there are questions, and when there are uncertainties, when things are not straightforward, oftentimes there's a breakdown in communication and there's a breakdown in the information transferring from the healthcare professionals to the pregnant individual. And that's something that I feel really passionate about, as you read my bio earlier about people being able to make decisions by being informed. And so I think it's really important when things are not straightforward for there to continue to be information sharing and elevation of the understanding of the pregnant person so that they can make decisions within their value system in an informed way. And so I offer doula services through my website, drkpregnancyspecialist.com, to individuals who want to learn about complications. They want, that doula experience of information sharing for things that are not so straightforward. And so in that way, I'm not their care provider. I'm a resource to them for information so that they can take that information back to their team for this with their
Amazing.
body.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Like I
Thank
okay,
you.
we'll reach out to schedule another one because I have at least like six other questions I wanna ask you. So we'll do it again. But thank you so much for sharing and thank you so much for what you do. Until next time.
Thank you. Thank you. I look forward to next time.
Absolutely. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.